Welcome to The View on Data, a monthly roundtable podcast where women in data share unfiltered stories, career lessons, and real talk about what it takes to thrive in the world of data and tech.
Welcome back to The View on Data, where we talk about all topics in the data space and what it's like working here. Today's topic is about finding community in the data space. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Yeri, one of the resident architects on the team here at DBT, and I'm going to pass it off to Faith.
Hi, I'm Faith McKenna, and I'm a technical instructor at DBT. How about Rick?
Hi, I'm Rick. I am a manager for our data analytics and enablement team.
Awesome. So today we're talking about the power of community. What does community mean to you in the data space?
Yeah, I think I feel like I have said this so often that I almost feel like it's cliche, but DBT's annual conference, soon to be called DBT Summit, is my favorite time of year for so many reasons, and the biggest reason is because it's the first place where I found community in data. So when I went to DBT's conference back in 2022, it was the first time I talked to people who had like the same daily struggles at work as I did. And I think that was kind of the first time it clicked for me, like, oh my God, wait, this is actually out there. Like, I can go find these people and talk to them. Oh my God, this is what networking means. Because I think kind of prior to going to DBT's conference in 2022, I was like, networking feels like really skeevy and bad. And I'm just like reaching out to people and being like, you want to give me a job? But no, it was actually just finding other people who had the same job as me and who had the same problems that I did at work and like the same solutions and wins too. I think that's the first time it felt real to me, community and data.
Yeah, I think I've been really spoiled because my entire career, I've always been at DBT and I've always understood what that community was like until, I was able to talk to, my friends or, some of my siblings, and they just don't really have that in their careers. They really have to reach for it versus I feel like in the DBT community, like I have always been able to talk to folks just really naturally. And I think that sometimes I feel like I take that for granted because there's so many folks I have met through Coalesce, through talks, through meetups where they just kind of happen naturally. And I think that to share, same experiences is kind of like having older siblings in a lot of ways, where it's like you can save yourself a lot of the hardships because these things are already available for you. And folks will just reach out and, reach out to you or you can reach out to them. They're so friendly. And I think that it's one thing to have a community that's just online and, will do the thing because they feel like they have to, but I feel like there's a sense of warmth within the DBT community that feels a little differentiated in, the data community. What about you, Yeri?
Yeah, funnily enough, I did not start I found the DBT community, but I started with local meetups. And I started looking for community because I was transitioning to the space and I was trying to connect with folks. And there was, I vividly remember joining meetups.com or, something like that and looking for data. There'll be like Coffee and Code or Our Ladies. And there was one data on conference at this community college. You just go, you throw topics. And I made a really good friend at that conference. We were both new to the space. We connected. There was one session that was just about mistakes you've made in the data space. And that's always fun to hear, how people felt supported or not, the horror stories. But that was really nice. And then I started really wanting to look for other things that are out there. And I found the DBT Slack and Locally Optimistic and maybe 10 other Slack channels, to be honest. I was in so many at the time, trying to find my people, and it's interesting because that was one of my next questions for you all is around how did you find your people in data? Like, did you just, like Rick, you mentioned you have been lucky enough to be surrounded, right, by the right, like basically the right group of people, like really engaged, supportive. Have you felt like you had to do more than like seek outside of the already existing space? Or like, how did you know you already had the right people?
I think that you kind of know when you're removed away from the right people when you experience the wrong people. I'm so honest. Like, honestly, it was, I feel like when I first started, I was around like Drew and Tristan and like Aaron and
Mm.
Connor and Jeremy. And I was like, I'm going to spread my wings and like, I'm going to leave Fishtown Analytics and like, I'm going to do this other stuff. And then when you're surrounded and that's taken away and like you realize that and you have like this parallel of folks who perceive themselves as being like, I'm just insane, like data leader or whatever. And then you kind of see the work behind the scenes and you're like, okay, there's like a little bit of some glitter going on here on the facade to cover up what's going on internally. And I think that was the really big thing for me is like, it was a huge wake up for kind of realizing the differentiation of like, just because someone has prestige doesn't mean that they are connected or like there's difference between like doing the work and having good marketing.
Totally.
And that's like the thing where too it's, you know, there are micro communities too within like the DBT community. And I think that I always searched for and found people who had talks that I was like, I like the way that they are very honest or like the way that they present, where it's like not prim and proper, but it's like just resonates with you and this like emotional level. I think the other thing too is like, you know, when I was seeking mentorship when I was head of data, I always searched for women because I think that there's certain experiences that for me where I'm like, they just will understand a little bit more than and understand some of my experiences. And so I think that was super helpful to find mentorship within the DBT community or within the data community. Honestly, back when like Twitter was still like a bigger thing, that's how I would search for folks because I never go on LinkedIn.
I miss data Twitter so much, man. I miss it so much. RIP.
Right? Like, yeah. Faith, what about you?
Yeah. It was just like, can we just like also have a moment of appreciation for the data nets era of data Twitter? Were any of y'all around for this?
I was like, never on Twitter.
I mean, so like data Twitter, for those of you who don't know, for any listeners who don't know, like data Twitter used to be just this kind of like wild but really fun place. And the first time that data mesh started to become a thing, like when it like really caught some traction and people were talking about like data mesh, like microservices, we should have decentralized data, which like to go on the record, I think data mesh is cool actually. But like there's also some like healthy just joking around the way that like data pros kind of get too buried in their own jargon sometimes. So there was a group of people on data Twitter who were like, you've heard of data mesh. Now get ready for data nets. It's an even better way to understand your data. And pretty soon we'll come out with data harpoons so that you can harpoon your big whales inside of the nets. And it just became like so deep fried and off the walls. And like, they don't make internet like that anymore, man. I miss it.
Oh gosh. So you found some of your people on Twitter. Where else did you find your people?
Yeah, some of them on Twitter. And so I like became pretty active on data Twitter as well prior to Coalesce 2022. And I ended up just like randomly sitting with a couple of folks from data Twitter at the opening keynote. And those people were Mariah Rogers and Ian Fahey, who Mariah, good friend, active in the DBT community and also active in Data Angels. And Ian, former DBT Labs employee, and now is off doing a different thing. But like, I just went to Coalesce alone and was kind of lonely and was like, oh, can I sit with these random people who look friendly? And they turned out to be friendly and nice. And I think like meeting, I think it was kind of like twofold, right? Because Meeting Mariah and Ian, who like have turned out to be pretty good friends over the last couple of years, was almost on accident, which I think was like a good reminder for me, who loves structure and predictability, that like sometimes embracing a little bit of chance is good for you. As much as it like gives me heartburn, it does lead to good things. So there was them. And then my first year at Coalesce as well, I was on the scholarship with Jess Turney, who is actually the founder of Data Angels. So she was the one who actually got me into the Slack in the first place, which is like probably my favorite hangout spot out of like all of the data Slacks. I mean, the DBT community Slack is obviously great, but there is something special about a place that's like no boys allowed, you know?
You know, I know. I was thinking of like finding. I'm also curious about. So for me, finding my people actually what pushed me to try to find community was I was also looking for mentors, like
Yeah.
guidance, right? I was like, where can I go to find someone who has a similar experience to me or looks like me and gets like who has done a career transition, all kinds of things. I was looking for certain folks, and I had a very hard time finding people. And I remember I had joined um, one that was focused on UX research,
Cool.
one that was focused on the locally optimistic also was one that I
Yeah.
joined, so one on data, and another local one, and they all had donuts. You know, those little like
Mm.
you will randomly pair. You can sign up for one. Will randomly pair you, and maybe you'll connect with folks. And I did that because I was trying to find, you know, when you don't know where to start. I would look for people and you're like, this is probably a good way to start. And I met a lot of people. I talked to a lot of people. And I realized what felt at the time, though, was like, there are not many people that can relate to certain parts of my journey, right? That can give me the guidance
Yeah.
that I'm looking for. But I have a lot of people who are in similar boats where they're all looking for mentors as well and guidance, right? And so I had to reshape this idea of like what mentorship would look like for me.
Hmm.
So I'm very curious, like how did you all tackle this idea of like mentorship in general, but also in the data space? It's like, how did you find mentors or how did you think about that? Um, and then yeah, and then I can share also some other things that I explored in that avenue.
Yeah, because I'm so interested in what you like in some of those, I guess, shifts in thinking that happened for you, Yeri. Do you want to share a little more about that?
Yeah.
And like
You know, the
what you
big
thought
thing
mentorship used to be, you know?
I thought, when the formal idea of mentorship, someone who has experience and then can give you
Hmm.
great advice and guidance and like recommendations about your path, especially if you happen to have gone to college or have very structured education. There's a very formal way of thinking about mentorship or like how it's
Yeah.
presented to you. And when you're making a transition, you think, where can I find that? And I did not find it. And no one was going to sit with me and actually carve time and like really give me a good idea of like defining what's next, what it looks like. You don't have an advisor, a career advisor. No. And so I flipped it and was just like, instead of trying to find it, I'm going to, and I've said this, I prototype my experience in data until I find what works. And then I'm going to share back. And instead of like this whole, like, I need someone to tell me, I'm going to share back and see how people respond to it. And that's actually what pushed me to start speaking more and writing more. And the two places that really encouraged me to do that at the beginning was a DBT Slack community where I was told, Yuri, go submit a talk, coalesce. So New Orleans,
Yes.
someone at DBT she was so encouraging. And she was just like, go for it. And then in Locally Optimistic, someone was like, you should write about your
Yes.
experience, right? Like, because you have some ideas, and they had like a whole program, like where people were giving me feedback, they were editing my stuff. And I was like, those two paths helped me realize I don't have to know what I'm doing. The mentors are like focused on very specific pieces of my skills, or they're
Mm.
cheerleaders. And that's helping
Yeah.
me like form an opinion. And all of a sudden, instead of looking for the mentor, I decided I'll be the mentor and share my lessons
Yeah.
learned. And so that's how I ended up with Data Angels. And like I did stuff at universities. I would sign up for like mentoring college students or like for any programs that I could find. I've done so many variations, group, individuals, and stuff because I figured I would learn something from there, but also um, I had to shift completely like this idea of like it had to look a certain way. I was like, I can share what I'm learning as I'm going. I don't have to be in this end place. I just need to be sharing because that's what people are looking for as well. So yeah, I'm curious, like what did that look like for you all?
There's like something that I so relate to, Yuri, where it's like when I was head of data, I was just like seeking out mentorship everywhere. I was like specifically looking at like women whose careers were like very deep into their careers where I'm like, I want them to like have seen all the things and like do
Right.
whatever. And they were kind of at this point where it's like time is a flat circle. And they're like, yeah, I did the thing and I don't want to do it anymore. So now I'm going back to IC work. And
Yeah.
I felt like I was kept trying to find mentorship. And then when I felt like I found it, it turns out then I'm like, ooh, I'm like 2 meetings into this, and this is not really the mentor that I'm
Yeah.
all the problems kind of develop, and you don't really know what you need until you've experienced the things at work to then know what you need sometimes.
Mhm.
But then I feel you in terms of like, okay, well, I'm just going to go with my gut and then like see how am I checking in with myself and then like find and then eventually find community there. And it very similar to you, it was not that I found my perfect mentor.
Mhm.
Um Rather I found people that were in very similar positions as me. Um and then actually becoming a mentor to say that yeah, I didn't know either, and this is how I would think about it, but I think
Yeah.
at the end with a lot of what comes to mentorship, it's like, do you have the skills? And, like, also, do you trust yourself? And if you don't trust yourself,
Mm.
you have some sort of feedback in the workplace, and if you don't, then seek out what other areas of feedback you can get,
Mhm.
whether it is through peers. Peers themselves can be mentors, um, but yeah, I've always struggled with mentorship, um, but I have found that it's like if you find someone on stage that you resonate with, or if you know, have a manager that you really, really enjoy, but then like you don't want them to just be your mentor, asking them like who are some people that you've worked with whose work you've really admired.
Mhm.
What about what about you, Faith?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, both of y'all. I like the sort of shared perspective there of mentorship perhaps being a little bit of a piecemeal activity and maybe more skills focused as opposed to one person who can be your sage
Mhm.
and guide you through your data career. I really wish that existed, but I don't know that it does. Just exists in Fourth Wing, folks. So if anybody's reading some dragon fiction, you can find a sage in there. Yeah, I think it's looked really similar for me where I have definitely tried to find a sage to guide me through my career transition and haven't managed to. It is not for like lack of putting myself out there, but I think like understandably everybody's life is really busy and like everybody's life is so complex. And so I don't know that like most humans have the like time to be the sage for someone else. So instead what it's looked like for me is similar to what you said, Rick, finding people that I admired and just like letting them know. And if I had specific questions or advice that I was looking for, usually people are down to give you specific advice. I find like when I would reach out to people and go, can I pick your brain about your career for 15 minutes? Like that honestly didn't go over that well. And I think the further I've gotten into my career in data, the more I've realized like, oh, that's just because like life is chaotic and people just have very limited time. It's not because they don't care. But uh, Yeah, I mean, that happened when I met my like former grand boss at DBT at Coalesce for the first time. I told him like, you were a teacher who transitioned into data and technical instruction work. I want to do that. And I would like to hear about how you got your job at DBT specifically. And we talked about that for 20 minutes over coffee. I told him I intended to apply to his team and eventually did. And it was the same with my previous job as an analyst at my last job. I think finding the things that I admired in both my boss and my peers and asking them like, hey, how did you get so smart about SQL? Every time you give me feedback on my SQL, you're always pulling out these crazy tricks that I didn't know they existed. And I don't know where I'm supposed to learn those things because every online course is just like select from group by. Nobody's doing any of these cool tricks that you have. And they were really willing to give me advice. So I think like similar to y'all, I feel lucky to have had like many mentors in different specific areas of career development. And like, I think just learning to get over any embarrassment that I had about being like, I think you're cool and I would like to know how you did this thing. People usually are fine with that. And like, I'm now on the receiving end of that pretty frequently on LinkedIn and like, which is obviously like, you know, flattering or whatever, but it does teach me kind of the reverse end of it too, where I'm like, oh my God, wait, this DM that I got from somebody who wanted to pick my brain about something really vague. I didn't respond to it because there was nothing for me to latch onto there. And it's not because I don't care about their career, but like the people who did ask specifically, like, I'm going to apply to DBT and like, what do you think about the culture? And what do you think about the workload and the direction? I'm like, okay, that I can help you with. Like that we can, yes, let's talk for half an hour. So I think developing some more awareness of, is there like a word for it? I feel like there's got to be a German word for the understanding that everyone's life is infinitely complex and busy. I feel like Germans have really specific words for everything. You know what I mean?
It's kind of, when I hear it almost like we're all built our team, our mentoring team or approach in a different way. Like it's pieces, right? I think that's what you learn. And that's the whole like building community in this space and like networking. People don't like the word networking, but that's it. Building community, you can shift it and call it building community, but it's like, that's what it is. You find the people that you can resonate with and the people that maybe you want to learn one very specific thing and it's a one-time session and other people are willing to give you more time. I think about that especially because I'm curious how you all have maintained community over time. Mine has like ebbed and flowed over the years. Like during peak moments of transition or like swirling questions, you're like so determined to find other people, right? And then sometimes you get very comfortable and then you just not as active per se, unless people are reaching out to you all of a sudden to like give back. Or that's why I like mentoring programs in general, because then it keeps me stable. I think about that because I read this book years ago. I think it's called Designing Your Life. And networking has always been, I love people, but I don't, I also struggle with the networking, the just like surface level conversations, right? And so what I loved about that book was that I was trying, and I'm a journaler, but as I was reflecting on like, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Blah, 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 all these questions. One of the things they ask you to do is like, is gathering people's life stories in a way, right? Like, or career journeys, whatever is interesting to you at that point. And I would reach out to people that I did not know, like either heard them in a podcast and loved what they were talking about, or read one of their blog posts, reach out, or found them on LinkedIn and have a title that I really like, was like, love to have that title one day. And I'll reach out and I was just like, it was a very specific ask of like, if you have a few minutes, I'm really interested in hearing how you, like your journey, right? To how you, and like, what was that like? What are the things that worked well for you and all that? And I met some pretty cool people. And when you talk to them, asking them, the amount of people that said yes surprised me. A good number of people will say no, but the amount of people that said yes, I was like, oh, this could work. And, but I met, and when I would talk to them, some of them would share books. Some of them would share courses. Some of them would just point blank say, you know, it's because I knew this person and they gave me the job, or tell you how they got there, right? And you're like, networking matters, right? But they're like, you should talk to this person. They are like, I think you would enjoy talking to them. And then I would reach out to that person. And then they'll be like, oh my gosh, if you're ever interested in this, you know, you should keep in touch. You never know. And you're just all of a sudden building community. But it was a critical moment, right, for me of like, I need to build this community. I need to like get to know people. But it takes a lot of work. And so I remember once I reached a point where I felt like I could better answer my questions that I have for myself, I paused. You pause. And then I remember a year later doing a little bit more. So I'm curious, it's like when you think of your community, right? Like and like mentoring or just like maintaining those relationships, what has it looked like for you all? And what have you done to like either has it, ebbed and flowed? How do you maintain it? How do you water it? All of that.
I definitely resonate with this type of thing ebbing and flowing over the course of your life. And also with that being okay at a baseline, because obviously it's really important to water your relationships and invest in them. And sometimes your life will just be too chaotic and you'll go dark for a little while. I think when you're in a period though where like you do have the space to invest and water your community, I mean, I think practically it's good to invest in your community before you need to lean on them, because that's just kind of the give and take thing, right? Like people aren't going to want to help you find a job if you haven't helped them find a job or help them make a connection in the first place. But also from like a less practical standpoint, it just like feels good to have the net of people to lean on. And so for me in like the Data Angels Slack, most weeks I try to do like a wins of the week thread, which is really positive and fun. And that's just like hearing random stuff about people's lives. Like they might post a win that's like, I finished this dashboard that was really killing me and it's so pretty and the CFO said I did a good job. And I freaking love that stuff. And sometimes people will be like, I finished renovating my school bus or I learned how to ice skate. And that type of thing has been just like a really fun way to stay connected with the Data Angels community in particular, because it's like low stakes. And I feel you too, Gary, that like it feels a little like mind numbing sometimes to have just like surface level conversations with people. What I have found over my career so far has been that like that kind of stuff is like pretty necessary, even though I don't love it. and that it's very much those first little like roots that have to shoot into the ground before you get like more sturdy roots that'll take you through like difficult periods in your life. And so I think that looks like a little wins of the week thread. There's like a handful of people in the DBT community Slack who are always doing just like the most primo shit posts. And so I always try to go and like hang out with them. There's one guy on the DBT community Slack who posts like the most ridiculous sunburst charts I've ever seen in my life. And he's convinced that like sunburst charts are following him around the internet because he hates them. And so he sees them all the time. And little like niche things like that are just feel like both productive and fun ways to stay connected when I go through periods where I'm like, I don't have any insights to share. I'm working. I'm like, I feel like sometimes you don't have anything to share with the community because you're like actively learning the thing. And I've been in that period for a hot minute now where I'm like, I've like taken some step ups in responsibility at work and like trying new things and new programs and stuff. And I don't have anything to share yet, partly because I haven't finished learning. And also like some of it is, can't share about it till it's over. But that's what I would say.
I'm like trying to get back to like what was the beginning question, because now I'm like mentally writing in my head of all of the things that like I've been thinking about that I wanted to touch on. And I'm like, this is deviating from the original question.
How do you maintain your community?
Direction, but it's like, how do you maintain community over time?
I'm an awful texter. And if you ask me to make a recurring meeting on my calendar that's outside of work, I get hives. I like don't like time commitments unless it's like very far and infrequent and I already know exactly what to prepare for. Otherwise it becomes very vague and it makes me just like anxious. But I I think that right now, at least in the last honestly, 2 years, I think that I have been very much lacking in, watering my, job community because or my professional community because I'm so busy right now trying to water my personal communities.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, the thing that you have to kind of know that you don't trade off. It's that, sometimes it's interconnected and sometimes it's not, and I think that I spent a lot of time, for the first, I think, 5 years of my job, really watering the DBT community and, trying to connect with folks and, like, building more of, safe spaces, and I am, have 2 mentees that I love so much, and I will, give them my kidney if they ask, because I had seen so much of myself in them, but those are people where I'm like, "Yeah, we have recurring meetings," and you have to pry those recurring meetings from my cold, dead hands. Um, but I think that there are other things too, right? Where it's it's not just about, I'm going to show up in these communities, but I'm going to show up in whatever space I'm in, and I will give everyone my time. And I've seen, those little interactions continue growing, Jess. Jess was someone that I met 3.5 years ago. She's part of the Data Angels. She started Data Angels. And
Yeah.
I ran into her 2 weeks ago.
No
And
way.
she was like, let's grab coffee. And then let's talk about our careers and how they've grown since the last time that we've chatted. And I think that it is leaving doors open where you have
Yeah.
kindness and kindness scales. And I think that when you're able to also ask questions pointedly, I think Faith, you said this, where it's if someone asks me hey, I'm applying to DBT, I was wondering if you can give me a referral. I'm like, I'm not going to respond to that because I don't know you.
Right.
And but if you ask me something that's much more pointed and you're respectful also of my time, then I'd be like, okay, this person gets it and I will give you my time. And that's going to scale in the personal communities that you have. And I think that to me has been the biggest shift in my head where I don't feel like I have to give everything to have a community, but rather it is I can show up, I can be kind first and be genuinely excited about someone's careers and wanting to hear them and then having the honor to see them grow years later or finding moments of reconnecting. And I think that to me is much more important of the individuals and then how that
Yeah.
individual scales within communities. Because in the end, when I think about my professional network of the people I've interacted with, it is so large and wonderful. And I feel like because of a few conversations I've had with someone, I feel comfortable reaching out to them to say hey, I would really like your advice in this area because I feel like I'm lacking here. But like, I think that the way I think about my community, I think of my personal communities. Um, and then I think about my professional, my direct reports. And then I'm my team. And then I think about the outskirts outside of that. And that to me is how I need to prioritize and think about my time and how I spend my emotional energy. Obviously, I think that when I was much younger in my career, I think I would have been I really need a job. And so I don't know where to begin. But
Right.
for all of the folks that are looking for community and looking to expand, especially as you're trying to, shift your career, shift your jobs, um, just being able to ask pointed questions in LinkedIn, go to local meetups and just be kind and be curious and be considerate. I think that is gets you so far.
I agree. I love that you said that. I feel like one parting thing that would love to hear from all of us is around, I think what we think, what are the opportunities when we're thinking about building community and relationships with people at work and outside of work, people who can celebrate your wins and all that stuff. I bring that up
Yeah.
because most people think of it as I need a job and I'm just planning for my career switch or my career opportunity. I have I had to shift my thinking years ago that it's not about the next job. That's nice. That's one of the
Yeah.
benefits of your network. But I was at a company once where I just had no one to turn to as well for thought partnership, for like sharing my wins at work, for talking about stuff that was like that I wanted to nerd out that I could have talked to my friends about, right? They would support me, but it's very different. And
Yeah.
is when, I mean, having these spaces or people you could have these conversations with, both informally or formally, however you do it, is huge. It's going to like, it really helps in other ways. And so it can also help you stay sane if you're at a job that's really tough and you're a team of one. You're building your team, right? Outside of just work. So also being able to think about community beyond, can I get a job or not? Thinking of it as like, it's
Yeah.
a long-term kind of investment that doesn't, like you all have said, it doesn't have to be look the same every season in life, but you have to think like networking is not just, can I get the job? It's like, can I find my people? Are there
Yeah.
people that I can have some thought partnership outside? Are there people who will push me and ask me like hard questions about things that I care about, right, in this space that will challenge my thinking? I don't know, stuff like that. So I would urge people to think beyond just the career search. I know sometimes that's the most pressing, but keep in mind, it's just like, what else could you think of leveraging your community for?
I love that, especially around like thought partnership and people who will ask you difficult questions about problems you're trying to solve at work. Oh, just saw the cat go by. There he is. He just got out. He just got done with his sunbathing in the window. Very important. um, yeah, I think about it too in terms of camaraderie that can be hard to get from your social group, because like your personal group, my friends don't really understand what I do for a living, and I kind of like it that way. I When I hang out with my friends, I want to be talking about like whatever book that we're all obsessed with or whatever TV show we're all obsessed with. I don't really want to talk about data with them. I still need the same friendship though. I still meet people who understand how much fun it is when you hang out with a team of DBT developers from another company and they're like, "Oh my god, I didn't know I could do this thing in DBT." Like it's kind of like a unique rush, and like my friends are excited about that for me, but they don't get it. And finding other people who like understand just kind of those highs and lows, I guess, like I mentioned earlier, and like um yeah, I like also to Rick your perspective on what I heard you say when you were talking about your kindness will scale, your interactions with individuals will scale. What I heard in kind of the undercurrent there, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but just like you just don't know where things will grow into, and you don't really know like what will bloom from small interactions, and for that, like for that alone, it's worth taking the coffee chat from Jess that you ran into 2 weeks ago, and like and keeping, yeah, I don't know, just like your best foot forward, I guess, because you just don't know where things will grow.
And also like knowing yourself too. Like I can't
Yeah.
commit to a large community and like being present because I it's like something that I really struggle with and something that like I would like to eventually invest more time in, but I just can't right now.
Mhm,
And it's like one of those things where it's like it's okay, you don't need to be in a huge group, or you
mhm.
can like be in a group and participate as like much as you want.
Yeah, I agree. Don't overcommit yourself. It's not
Mm.
about that, right? It's about like being true to yourself, but like finding your people, I guess, is the root of it, or find people who can lift you up a little bit, or you can learn from. Sometimes I'm very quiet in many spaces, but I still feel like I'm a part of it, you know? And
You
so,
are.
yeah, so I don't know. It could look like many different things. I'm trying to think of if we have any would I know we all had mentors look like very different things to everyone. So, I think, is there anything that stands out when you think about building community or mentorship, that like a memory and experience with a particular person, or anything that stands out to you all from your careers to date?
This is this is more on like the opposite end of mentorship, but it is okay to tell a mentor where it's like not really working for you anymore because
Yeah.
your careers have just changed. I think it's
Yes.
totally okay. You saved everyone both time. Like I have had that experience. I had like this one mentor who I really wanted to chat with her and really connected with her. And then we were agreed to meet quarterly. And then after a quarter, she was like, yeah, I shifted my job completely. And I was like, okay, well, this is not really going to work for me anymore. um, but I think that for me, it has always been like mentorship. I think in finding them, and thing that stuck out to my mind that I wish I knew earlier was that mentorship doesn't have to be it. And we've said this before, an all encompassing thing where you want to be like that person. Mentorship could be in this specific area, and it could just be like, hey, it's okay if I ask you some questions every now and then. It doesn't have to be this recurring check-in. And I think that was something that really broke my brain after we were all chatting about this. It's like, yeah, back then I didn't have to have formally ask someone to be a
Yeah.
mentor, and put a lot of pressure on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's our ideas of mentorship, right? I think people, it's like you do it this way, you engage. It's almost like a teacher, and you're like, actually, sometimes it's just answering that one question that's top of my mind. Now I have a direction, and then I'll find someone else that helps me with the next, or book that serves as the guide for a little bit. It looks like so many different things.
I also love the call to have the push and pull in your mentorship or just professional relationships of just saying when things aren't working for you and asking for what you need, even if the person's going to tell you no. I mean, this is something I've done with like both of my bosses who I would consider them mentors in different ways.
Mhm.
And both of those boss direct report relationships have required a good amount of like, when you talk to me like this, I don't hear what you're saying. I just start to kind of freak out because you're really critical. And I need you to like tell me something that I'm doing well and then offer me the criticism so that I can like hear you and not spiral. Or just like, I actually need you to be more critical of my work. I feel like you're trying to be too nice. Like these are things I've had to say to like both to bosses who are on like very opposite ends of that spectrum, and asking very shocking information on the view on data right now, that asking for what you need is often fruitful. I'm sure you all have never thought of this before in your lives. No one's ever said it. But I'm saying it today.
Well, yeah, that's all the questions that you can think of, I think, on your minds.
If you don't know where to start, find one person and then find the next person and ask them where their community is in your profession.
Exactly. Anyone can be a mentor. Everyone can be your community. But also, just like your coworkers also count as your community. If you have a great thought partner at work, I mean, look at Faith and I. We wrote a
That's
blog just
right.
because we don't work together like that, and we connected, and we were like, hey, we have same ideas. And then next thing you know, thought partners. So communities everywhere.
Yeah, I absolutely consider you a mentor in a lot of ways. And I didn't ask you, so sometimes it just happens.
Sometimes it just happens.
That's your call to action, listeners. Go find somebody you admire and ask them one specific question about how they got to be the way that they did. See what happens. Let us know.
Yep. Exactly.
The View on Data is sponsored by DBT Labs, produced by Katie Chubb, edited by Jeff Fox, and created by Balaji Oyejide. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a 5-star review or share with a friend. Thanks for listening.